Wow, I feel very professional having an actual introduction. Thank you. So hello, everybody. It's good, nice to have you all here. I feel like I know many of you. I'm going to share my screen real quick here, and we are going to. How does that look, Melanie? Okay, good. All right, so we're going to talk about healthy eating and why it's so confusing. And you might be thinking, well, I'm not confused by it. That's great. You're ahead of the game because it can be confusing. We're often given lots of different information. And so we're just going to talk about it today. I encourage everybody here to ask questions, unmute yourself. If you have a question, if I bring up something that you agree with, disagree with, want to elaborate on, that's great. This is a learning opportunity for all of us. I'm not here to tell you what healthy eating is. I'm just here to try to open up a conversation. And you can also be on the chat. Melanie is going to watch that for me since I cannot see it. And Melanie, of course, you can always interrupt me, and that is absolutely okay. All right, so let's move along here. So I've mentioned this before in other talks, but I'm not a registered dietitian. I'm not a nutritionist. In my master's, we did have a good amount of basic education on nutrition, but I am by no means, it is outside of my scope of practice to prescribe um, eating to anybody besides myself. So please, if you really want to know specifically what works for you, get with a registered dietitian. I know some that I can refer to you, but Harmon's has a registered dietitian. A lot of the grocery stores have them now because it's become important that they have that outlet or that resource for folks. So there are lots of registered dietitians out there. If you want help finding one, I'm a resource for you. The main thing is find a registered dietitian that lives a similar lifestyle that you live and that you feel is healthy, right? Because just because you're a registered dietitian doesn't necessarily mean that you're healthy. And it's always nice to see when people are putting their money where their mouth is, right? Um, all right. So just remember that as we go through this. All right. So today we are this webinar is really meant to have you think about or reconsider what healthy eating means. Um, Eating healthy is very personal. What's healthy for me is not necessarily healthy for the next person. It has a lot to do with any genetic realities you have, any disease that you have, any specific goals that you may have. So that's part of the reason that healthy eating is confusing, is because depending on what you're trying to do, that is going to shape what you eat. So if you talk to your bodybuilder friend who is taking a ton of protein powder, that works for that person, but that doesn't necessarily work for you. So then, and that's not necessarily unhealthy for what that person's goal is. So you need to always consider who's giving you the advice and why they're following that advice. And you also need to think about why you follow certain advice and what advice have you been giving yourself for years and years and years and years. And is it outdated or does it need to be uh, just looked at again? So again, reconsider doesn't mean what you're thinking is wrong. You can reconsider it and be like, all right, I'm right on. This is good. And you could also look at it and say, you know what, I do need to make some changes. So again, I'm here to start the conversation. All right, get you guys thinking about it. So what does healthy eating look like for you? And these are the things that I thought of that I hear people say are healthy. Organic is a big one, right? I eat organic, so I'm healthy. I eat low sodium, so I'm healthy. I eat natural foods, whatever that means, right? I eat natural. I only have sugar free. I only eat fat free. Um, Everything I eat is vitamin fortified, or I don't have any GMOs. Those are the ones I thought of off the top of my head. That doesn't mean there aren't 1,000 other ones that you might think of. Are there any here that I have not thought of that somebody else on this webinar thinks about when you think healthy? You know, what's one of those buzzwords that you look for either on your package that you're buying or in your brain when you're buying food? Anybody? You can put it in the chat if you have some, and Melanie will relay it to me. So thinking about what do you look for? Some people know about perimeter shopping. I don't know if you guys have heard about that at grocery stores. I know many of you have. That means sticking to the perimeter because that's where most of your healthy food is. Although I got to tell you, I think that the grocery stores have picked up on perimeter shopping. And now when you go to the grocery store, have you ever noticed that there's a ton of stuff in the perimeter now? There's like cookies and all sorts of wonderful stuff. But that's just not necessarily healthy.
So, Paige, a
So,
couple things.
yeah,
One is no added sugar, and
okay.
then fresh. So, like, and that's kind of what I thought of. Fresh fruits and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
vegetables would be
Love
healthy.
it. Wonderful. All right. Yeah, no sugar added. Ooh, that's a good one. No sugar added. Yeah, fresh, fresh. Excellent. Thank you. So, first of all, we need to consider who is pulling the strings of health, who is controlling what we're told is healthy. And I found this quote from The Guardian. I have the link at the very bottom down there. And it basically is saying that, whoever sponsors the nutrition research study often has a say in the outcome of that research study. So if Coca-Cola somehow gets on the board of diabetes, of curing diabetes, they might do a study that shows that diabetes isn't caused from sugar, it's caused from lack of exercise. And if you didn't know anything, you might believe that because Coca-Cola's in the business of sugar. That's what they deal, if you will. So they're not going to implicate themselves on a disease that is, pretty serious, type 2 and type 1, but type 2 diabetes especially. Type 1 too, but type 2 is something that you can get from eating. So you really need to know who is controlling these studies and who's putting this information out. I'm sure many of you have heard back in the 60s and 70s, fat was villainized, and that was very much manipulated by the sugar industry. They were like, hey man, it's not us. We're not the ones that are making people unhealthy. Let's blame fat. And then you saw this fat-free stuff come out. Fat-free milk, fat-free yogurt, fat-free crackers. Everything's fat-free, even Twizzlers. If you buy them, they're gluten and fat-free. Like that matters. They're still sugar. But if you're not thinking about it, believe, wow, okay, that means they're good. Fat is bad for me. Once again, a whole generation of folks who were really given misinformation. We have, and I'm sure y'all have seen this, and I'm not saying this
Hey,
is something that,
Paige,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. You keep cutting out. So, I don't know if, like, sometimes I can hear you and other times I can't. So, just
Hmm.
that's better. Right there's good. So, I
I
don't know.
just plugged that in. Let me know if it continues. Okay, Melanie, thank you. Because maybe my connection was bad on my headphones. Thank you. So many of you have probably heard about we have these 8, there might be more, but these big companies that control they own most of the brands out there. And so, if you see a study that is funded by General Mills, you need to look up what kind of brands do they own and see, does their study seem to make their brands and what they're selling okay while making other things the problem. And that's your first, like, aha, this might not be really a study that I want to base my own health on. One of the things I thought was interesting on this is Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Nestle, and Mars. Sugar, 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 and sugar. They own most of I'm not saying that Coca-Cola only owns sugar brands, but a brand that is based in sugar. 4 of them. Mars is like, candy bar. And we all know Nestle. Come on. We love Nestle. They are they're half of these 8 that are, own most of the brands of food out there. So this is a big reason why it's so confusing to eat healthy, because we don't know what to believe. Uh, we like to think, and I totally believe in science, absolutely, and I love the research process. But like many things, it can also be flawed. So that's when you have to take responsibility and really look at who funds this study. If I'm going to believe that fat free is healthy, well, who's telling me that fat free is healthy? What research are they basing it on, and who funded that study? Because that's going to tell me a lot about the study. And at the very end, they should say conflict of interest. I mean, there should be some transparency to the study. It should tell you who's involved. And if it doesn't, that's another red flag, right? Research should be completely transparent. They should not be hiding anything. So that's part of taking responsibility for your own health, knowing what you're putting in your body. So let's talk about some of those things that I listed, right, with the fat-free and sugar-free and organic and those kind of things. So, and I picked the topics that I found seem to be the most common things that I've heard people feel are healthy or unhealthy. Um, and there might be more, so we can talk about them. If I don't talk about something, put it in the chat or unmute and tell me. So, is fat really unhealthy? And I found this really awesome picture here that shows two very different versions of fat. On your left hand side, you have the avocado, it looks like olive oil, some nice salmon, and some different nuts. And in general, those are very high in fat, like avocado has good fat to it. Olive oil um, is basically a good fat. Now, one of the problems with something like olive oil is it's very condensed. So, do you see how much olive oil is there? You wouldn't want to have that much olive oil necessarily. Um, but you can eat a good amount of avocados, and salmon is good for you. And the fats that come in those foods are the fat that really help our bodies. Um, and you can see on the right hand side, we have a lot of, for lack of better word, junk food. Right? I see a snowball, some Twinkies, potato chips, little Debbie Swiss cakes. Hey now, let's not get mean. Those things are delish. Uh, but that all has, the trans fat in it. It has fats that are going to be hard inside of your veins, right? That's one of the things that fats that solidify at room temperature are also solidifying in your body. That's not a total rule of thumb there, but something to think about. So again, if you notice on the left-hand side picture, most of the things that are pictured there are natural or fresh, right, whole foods, where the stuff on the right-hand side are not. They're processed foods. And in fact, we're finding more and more how important fats are, especially to our brain health, but really to our whole body, right? What's good for your heart is good for your brain, is good for your body. What's good for your brain is good for your heart, is good for your body. I mean, there's no disconnect between our brain and our heart and our bones and everything else. So, healthy fats are super important. We're seeing that more and more and more and more, probably as a result of that villainization that happened in the 60s and 70s of fat. So, no, fat really isn't unhealthy. It depends on what kind of fat you're taking in. So, educate yourself. Know what kind of fat that you're taking in. Fat free doesn't necessarily mean healthy just because something doesn't have fat in it. In fact, a lot of times products that are fat free are sugar full because something's got to make that product taste good. And it's either going to be sugar or fat or salt, maybe. One of those three are going to be in it. So you can't take away the fat and have something taste good. You're going to add something else to it. So just be aware of those things. Is salt really unhealthy? There's been a little bit more research on salt lately. I couldn't find anything that I felt was definitive. Um, Salt is not unhealthy. It's an absolute a nutrient, or what is it, a mineral? Is it a mineral, probably? That our body needs. We need salt. It's super important. Like our heart needs salt. Um, but we don't necessarily need to get it from Cheetos. Although, who wouldn't want to get their salt from Cheetos? I mean, come on, right? That little bag of Cheetos has probably more than your daily need of salt. So it's not that salt is healthy or unhealthy. I mean, it is healthy, but it's moderation, right? How much salt are you taking in? There are people who don't take in any salt, and if they're predisposed, can have heart issues because uh, of that. They need that sodium for their body to function. If you're working out a lot and you're sweating a lot, you need to replace those electrolytes, right? Sodium is a huge part of electrolytes, and you see there's a huge market for electrolyte replacement. And with that, of course, you don't want to replace your salt with a whole bunch of sugar, Gatorade, right? There's other ways to replace your salt without drinking the Gatorade, even if it's sugar free. So salt isn't unhealthy, but a bag of Cheetos is, right? That's a lot of sodium. How much sodium are you eating? If you eat in at your own home and you make your own food, then you know how much salt you're using and you can be honest about it. If you're eating out a lot, you really need to get online, look at how much sodium's in the food that you're taking in. If you eat one meal out, there's a very good chance that you're getting more sodium than your daily allowance, what you should be getting. It's amazing how much salt is in foods. Anything processed usually has a ton of salt. And of course, too much salt can affect our blood pressure, right? Stress can also affect our blood pressure. So, if you're getting rid of salt to lower your blood pressure, but you're stressed all the time and you're not doing anything to control that stress, well, you know what I mean? So, we got to look at the whole picture here. Is sugar really unhealthy? So, if any of you have ever heard me talk, oh, sugar, it just makes us so angry. Just for the record, I have sugar. I eat dessert every day. Every day I eat dessert. The difference is I don't have it in my meals. I have dessert. If I want sugar, I'm going to eat a piece of cake. I'm not going to have a meal that has a very high content of sugar when I'm not eating dessert. That's what I call the dessert meals. That's food that you eat that's really high in sugar, even though a lot of times you don't know it. If I'm going to take in sugar, it's going to be a cookie or a cake or something obviously sugar full. Um, Sugar is not, I don't think that sugar obviously it gives us calories, it gives us energy. And the main thing about sugar is moderation, right? If we get too much sodium, we definitely get too much sugar, right? It was really hard to find a recommended amount of sugar for people to have. It's hard for you to find that. The best I found was 26 grams for females and like 32 for males. And I don't know what they're considering male and female, if that's just body size or what. But no, let's say we all go with the 32 grams. If you drink that Coke, you've probably had 4 times the amount of sugar that you're supposed to take in or that you could take in. So again, the form of sugar that you're taking in, is it through fruits? Is it through vegetables? Well, that's going to be a much better form of sugar than through Coca-Cola or through cereal. I like to I like to pick on cereals because they're a lot of times just very simple carbohydrates with a lot of sugar. And remember I can't remember what talk that I gave, but your body doesn't really care where the sugar comes from. It reacts exactly the same. You can eat an apple or you can have that Coke that's shown on this picture, and your body's going to process it the same. So if you overeat on fruit, you overeat on natural sugar, you're still going to have that possible reaction to that sugar, that insulin resistance, and possibly that prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So, in general, we want to keep our sugar intake on the low side. We want to minimize it. And the main thing is we want to know when we're taking it in. And I think that's the biggest problem with sugar is people don't realize when they're taking it in their bodies. And we'll get to sugar free. Oh, don't you worry. I'm not forgetting about you sugar free people. Oh, there you go. Our artificial sweeteners really unhealthy. Now, again, this is outside of my scope of practice. I wanted to bring this up because a lot more research needs to be done in artificial sweeteners. Now, we know like aspartame, I think that was proven to be not good for you quite a while ago. Um, There's stevia that's out on the market, which is like one of those natural artificial sweeteners. It's kind of in that gray area. Nobody really knows, or the people who say they know, I don't know what they're basing it on because I had a really hard time finding definitive research on it. But the main thing about artificial sweeteners is like anything else, you need to use them in moderation, and that goes for stevia. And I have heard that quite a bit with stevia. It is actually not a bad one, but you don't need to be sweetening everything you put in your mouth, right? Stevia is like anything. We feel like everything we put in our mouth needs to be sweet, and that's just not the case. If we get rid of that sweet, all of a sudden natural foods become much sweeter. Get off sugar for a month and have a pecan. Oh my gosh, they're like sugar bombs. You don't have to put sugar on pecans. They're wonderful, but you need to lower what you think is sweet for you to taste that level of sugar. There's research out there that suggests that the artificial sweeteners actually uh, makes you want more sugar. You know how sugar makes you want to have more sugar? The sweetness in artificial sweeteners is actually sweeter than sugar. So there's that thought, even though you're drinking Diet Coke, you're actually craving sugar more because you're drinking that Diet Coke. And don't you worry, we're going to talk about Diet Coke. Yes, we are, because that's one of those that folks feel like they're being super healthy because they're drinking their Diet Coke. Um, Soda in general, diet, regular, natural, organic, it doesn't matter. Soda isn't good for you, period. It just isn't. We can try to health it up all we want, but when you put sugar in, and when I say soda, I mean sugarful soda. I don't mean the LaCroix or whatever else, those flavored waters that don't have sugar in them. If you're not sure if your flavored water has sugar in it, you should check that out, right? A lot of them do, and you think that they don't, or they have that artificial sweetener. So we need to be very, very suspect of sodas for sure. All right, is organic always healthy? This is a good one because I think I know a good amount of people who say I only eat organic food, therefore I am healthy. Yet they exercise on their bodies, and some actually have type 2 diabetes um, or other food related. So organic definitely has its place, right? Organic means that you're not.
Sorry, Paige, you're cutting out again.
Okay,
We missed that last part.
okay.
Sorry.
Oops. Hang on. I see what the problem is. Let's see if this connection is better. Sorry. Is that better? Can y'all hear me? Yes, you can hear me? No, you can't hear me. Hang on. Now can you hear me? Yeah, I think that's better. Okay, that's better. Okay, sorry about that. I thought it was in, but it wasn't really in. So that should be much better. Okay. So talking about organic, what I was saying was I do know people who will say, I only shop organic. I only buy organic products. But they still battle with body weight, with extra fat, not just being, I don't care what you weigh, but extra fat on their body that for them makes them unhealthy. Not for everybody, but for that person it does. People who battle type 2 diabetes that eat organic. So organic by itself does not mean healthy necessarily. It depends. It depends on why you're eating organic and what you're eating organic. So if you decide I'm going to buy all of my thin-skinned fruit and vegetables organic, well, sure, yes, because you are absolutely cutting down on the. Can y'all see that
Yeah,
slide, Melanie?
no, it's
Oh,
off. I was
okay.
just going to tell you that.
Okay. If you are eating thin-skinned, uh, produce and vegetables, like I was saying, that's organic, then yeah, you're not getting those pesticides and those other things that come along with it. But if you're eating those organic Doritos, which were just on the screen and they're going to be back on the screen in just a second, no, you can't health up Doritos. Right? I know that everybody wants to health up Doritos because, if you like Doritos and you want them to be healthy, I love Doritos. They're not healthy. I know this when I'm eating them. I say to myself, Paige, what you're putting in your mouth is not healthy. Then I'm being honest with myself. Okay, I'm eating this and it's unhealthy. Can I health it up by making it organic? Possibly, but probably not. Is that better, Melanie? All right. So it just depends on what you're eating. Don't fall for the organic Doritos and the organic Cheetos. That might be a slightly healthier version of something that's unhealthy. Right? There's no way that you can make it healthy. It just is unhealthy. But maybe there's a sliding scale to it, right? So you're getting some less pesticides in your fried food. So you got to think about that. But organic does have its health realities, especially some of us react to those pesticides, right? They can make you not feel good. And over time, of course, it affects the majority of us. So organic is one that you just need to think about, what are you eating and how does organic help it be healthy? So here's I thought was an interesting one, because I always talk about processed foods, and I eat a lot of processed foods. It's hard to live and work and have children or dogs and not eat processed foods, right? It really is. But there's a difference. Not all processed foods are the same. And I found this on this fellow's it's kind of like a blog. And I didn't really read his blog, but I really, really, really liked this picture because it kind of shows that here we have processed foods on the left-hand side. We have French fries and M&Ms and those fruit roll-ups, 100% fruit, 100% sugar, and chips, right? All very processed foods. And then on the right-hand side, you have some more processed foods. The baby spinach or the arugula or the baby kale that you buy in those containers, which are lifesavers for many of us who have a busy life but want to eat healthy and don't have the time to chop up the kale. We buy them already pre-washed and pre-set in those little containers. That technically is a processed food. It's not coming to you in its original state. Any meats, unless you're killing that chicken, it is a processed food, right? There's processing going on. Yogurts. Do you see that yogurt and how it says plain on it? If you eat plain yogurt, good for you. 98% of the people do not, because have you ever tasted plain yogurt? It's really harsh. But it's good for you. But why do you think they start adding sugar to it, right? And then the other one I think are just nuts, right? So it's in a bag. It's gone through a plant, meaning like a processing plant, and it comes to you and it has been processed. But there's a very different nutritional reality between the left-hand side and the right-hand side of those pictures. So if I were to look at the ingredient list on that organic baby spinach, it would say spinach. That's it. Hopefully. Oh my gosh, if it says something else, don't buy it, right? Really, the only thing that should be in there is spinach. The only thing that should be in this organic beef is beef. The only thing that should be in this plain yogurt, I don't know what's in yogurt, but it's not a ton of its stuff, and it shouldn't be a ton of chemicals, right? So in these almonds is probably almonds and salt. So their ingredient lists are minimal, even though they're processed. So again, if you're buying canned vegetables, frozen vegetables, don't give yourself a hard time. It's hard to live off of fresh foods, especially if you're not getting to the grocery store 2 or 3 times a week. I eat a lot of fresh foods and I go to the grocery store all the time. So I can understand why it's just easier to buy frozen or canned. So just know that no, not all processed foods are unhealthy. But you got to be honest with yourself about what you're eating and what that means, what that processed food is. So look at those ingredients. You know, this was a wonderful thing that happened. When that happened, like 20 years ago,
Was it that long ago where they started putting the ingredients on things? Maybe they've always done it, but I remember in my life there that being a big thing that they had the ingredients on there. And you can see this top right hand one. We have stone ground whole wheat, which really we're looking for that whole wheat. I don't know what stone ground means. Flour, water, yeast, brown sugar. Sugar is the fourth ingredient. And then wheat gluten. So if you're celiac, you're not going to want to eat this. Or if you're gluten intolerant, you're not going to want to eat this. And know that it's got some sugar in it. It looks pretty healthy, but it's got some sugar. And then it's got the other things that we put in processed foods. Would this be something I would buy? I wouldn't. Probably. But it wouldn't be something that I would say, ew, that's awful. That's a horrible thing. Not sure. But the main thing is I know what it is. I know what I'm putting in my body. The lower left-hand one is hard to read, but I wanted to point it out because I love it. The first ingredient, I bet this is anything. This is, it can't be Frosted Flakes because that's corn. But anyway, I think it's a cereal. The first ingredient is whole ground wheat. That's good, as long as you're not gluten intolerant or celiac, right? Whole ground wheat, yay. Second ingredient is sugar. Third ingredient is raisins, sugar. Fourth ingredient is rice, sugar. Whole grain oats, I'll take that's good. Then brown sugar syrup, glycerin, then corn syrup. And then a few down the list is modified corn starch, molasses, and honey. 8 of those ingredients are sugar. I bet that cereal tastes great, right? But if you only read that first ingredient, you might think it's healthy. But you read that list and all of a sudden you're like, holy moly, I'm taking in a lot of sugar. Look at all those vitamins and minerals. I bet you get that from something that's not as sugary, maybe like fruit or vegetable, probably. Right? So just because something's fortified with vitamins doesn't mean it's also not fortified with a ton of sugar. So that was interesting. And that's not uncommon to find an ingredient list that's like that has sugar listed 4 different ways. So read your ingredient labels. Take responsibility for yourself. Know what you're putting in your body. Oh my gosh, I spend a lot of time reading ingredient labels. I spend a lot of time comparing. But once you learn it, then you know what you're going to get and what you're going to buy. All right, so here, this is what I'm kind of talking about. Let's observe our biases, our health biases. And I'm talking to myself too, because of course I have them. And make sure that you want to keep them. And these were things that came off the top of my head that I've seen people do or people say to me. You're strict about eating organic, yet you still eat fat-free foods. Right? Because there are chemical process that goes into making something fat-free, but by gosh, you only eat organic. Well, there's conflict there. I'm not saying it's a wrong conflict, but you need to own it. Know that that's what you're doing. Don't act like, oh, I'm so great because I eat organic. Well, you're also putting these other chemicals into yourself. Make sure that why are you eating fat-free? What's the value? There might be value for you. Well, great, but know that, right? Know it. You always have digestive issues, but never look to your food or drink as the cause. And that's something that's relatively new. You know, growing up, food wasn't something that we connected the dots with. You had a tummy ache, it maybe was something you ate, but it was a hot dog. You never thought, oh, maybe it's that broccoli that I was eating. Right? Food affects your digestive system. So you need to start to notice, when I eat this, I don't feel good. And it's not always something that isn't good for you. I mean, and some people don't care that they feel like crap after eating something or drinking something. But maybe just making that connection. You swear you drink Diet Coke because it's healthy. Oh, I love that. That's so good. It isn't healthy. Just say you drink Diet Coke because you like the taste of it. Don't try to health it up. Just say you like it and tell me to shut up. That I'll be more open to than trying to tell me that it's healthy or that's how you get your hydration. Again, I drink Dr. Pepper because I like Dr. Pepper, not because I think it's healthy. It's dessert. It's a dessert drink, and I know that while I'm drinking it. You don't like the taste of water. Oof, that's a toughie. Water, we're made of water. It's super important that we drink water. It's super important that we drink water that isn't sugared or isn't sweetened. And there's lots of ways to do that. But if you don't like the taste of water, you are setting yourself up for some health issues, right? Hydration's super, super important. My last one, just a little dig at Trader Joe's. You eat Trader Joe's cheddar bunnies because they're organic. I don't even know that there's a Trader Joe's cheddar bunny, but there's something at Trader Joe's that people eat and they think they're organic, and Trader Joe's sells it and they're good for you. No, they're not. They're a processed food. They're made of simple carbohydrates. Eat them because they make your kids happy, or eat them because they make you happy, but they're not something that's necessarily healthy. Right? Again, it's just educating yourself and knowing and owning up to why are you eating this. People can't believe that I eat desserts. I eat desserts because I like dessert and I want to live my life, right? But I know when I'm eating them. So learn what's healthy for you. What's healthy for me is not necessarily what's healthy for you. If peanuts hurt your stomach, then peanut butter isn't necessarily healthy for you. For other people, peanut butter is a great, especially natural peanut butter, it's a great source of protein. And it actually has okay fats. It's not the best fat from the peanut, but it's not bad. Broccoli. I always pick on broccoli, Brussels sprouts, fibrous vegetables. They can cause major digestive issues. And if you're having digestive issues, then most likely it's not something that's healthy for you. That means you're inflamed, right? We don't want to be in a constant state of inflammation. So maybe there's another vegetable that you can have, or maybe you need to cut it up differently or cook it differently so that you can get the nutrients from it without getting that digestive reality from it. So the way you do that is, food diary, digestion diary, or an emotional diary, and starting to look at, is what I'm eating connected to how I'm feeling, digestive wise, my mood. It's not for weight loss. I'm not preoccupied with weight loss. I am preoccupied with health gain. Right? You can be very healthy and have extra body fat on your body. Absolutely 100% possible. So it's not about weight. It's about health. So a lot of times we hear food diary and we think weight loss, and that's not what I'm talking about here. So until you start to have that connection between what you eat and drink and how you're feeling, it's hard to notice it. I know that doesn't make sense, but you have to start to notice it for you to notice it and then be like, oh, wow. A really hardcore example of this is if you drink a whole bunch of alcohol, the next day you usually feel crappy. Well, you drank too much alcohol, you feel like crap. Those two together, and maybe that will keep you from, having too much alcohol. I think that's one that a lot of people notice, but sugar and salt and those things we don't notice as much. So that's just a thought. General guidelines. Here are just some general guidelines. Eat whole foods. That means eat foods in their natural state as much as possible. If you can buy a bunch of kale and take it home and cut it up and make a salad out of it, great. If you need to buy it pre-packaged or in a bag, fine. But whole foods, fruits, vegetables, perimeter shopping. Nowadays, you can eat whole foods, fruits and vegetables much easier. It costs more money, but a lot of the grocery stores now are prepping foods for you. So if you love butternut squash, but you don't have the time or the strength to cut that thing, you could buy it pre-cut, right? Okay. Foods that don't have an ingredient list, which is basically whole foods, right? Foods that where their ingredient list is what's in the food. The ingredient list on that package of kale is kale, or the package of shrimp of spinach is spinach, or if you're buying a fish, it's fish. It's that type of fish. So if you can get away from having foods that have ingredient lists, great. Vegetables and fruits, lean meats. Right? I should put on here minimally processed foods. Foods that are, like we talked about, those ones that have been processed but still are in a pretty good, healthy state. So that's just general guidelines. Anything outside of those general guidelines doesn't mean don't do it. Just don't make it into something that's necessarily healthy. That's okay. We all deserve to have treats. Just know that they're treats. Eating Twizzlers because they're fat-free doesn't make them health food. It still makes them Twizzlers. And they're not healthy for your body. They might be healthy for your brain for a small amount of time. All right. So we want to be eating nutritionally dense foods. What are you getting for your calories? What kind of nutrients are you getting for your calories? So this is a great picture. We have a whole bunch of foods here they're pretty nutritionally dense. I don't know if ginger has a lot of nutrition to it, but it has a lot of aspects to it that are very healthy for you. But blueberries, pomegranates, salmon, avocado again, broccoli, right? All beans, legumes, all these things, if you were to look at what kind of nutrients you were getting compared to the caloric intake, and I'm not saying calories are bad. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, if you're eating healthy food, you probably really don't even need to worry about the calories that you're taking in. Because foods that are nutritionally dense usually aren't super, super high calorie. They can be, but they're not always. Whereas if you look at a bag of Cheetos, especially a bag of Cheetos that's bigger than a serving size, which most bags are, you're going to get a lot of calories, 760, something like that, calories for one or two, or for 2 or 3 servings. And you're not going to get a lot of nutrients. You're not getting a lot of complex carbohydrates. You're not getting a lot of good fats. You're not getting a lot of protein. You're getting a lot of simple carbohydrates, possibly trans fats, and you're just getting a lot of sugar, a lot of things that your body's just going to break down and make into sugar. So think about what nutrients. I can't remember what movie it was from, but somebody said there's no food in your food, right? There's no food in Cheetos. Cheetos have no food in them. Even organic Cheetos from Whole Foods, they don't have food in them. Y'all know I've done all this. Believe me, I've eaten those Cheetos from Whole Foods. They're delish. I can't remember who makes them, some person. But yeah, nutrient-dense foods, right? Food as fuel. What's it doing to fuel your body? So are your food choices nutritionally dense? Look at the ingredient list. Do you recognize all the ingredients as real? How much sugar is added? And be careful, because remember on that last thing that I did, you had that fruit smoothie. It had no added sugar, and it had a ton of sugar in it. So just because sugar isn't added doesn't mean it's not sugar full, right? And when a food doesn't have an ingredient list, right, it means that it's minimally or not processed. So that's what we're looking for. Look at the sodium. What's the sodium level compared to the caloric intake? If you have something that gives you 90 calories but is giving you 500 grams of sodium, and I don't even know what sodium comes in, that's a mismatch, right? We want the caloric intake and the sodium amount to be similar. And that's hard to find, especially in processed foods. But it's something to just look at and be aware of, right? What's the saturated fat? What's the unsaturated fat? Again, is there a lot of added sugar or natural sugar in there? And are the carbohydrates high? And why are they high? What kind of carbohydrates are you taking in? So again, taking responsibility, knowing what you're putting in your mouth, and knowing whether it's healthy or unhealthy. It's okay to eat unhealthy foods. Just don't try to make them healthy. Know that that's what you're eating. It's unhealthy. That's okay. I mean, within reason, right? Moderation, moderation, moderation. So here's what we do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The movie Say Anything, Joan Cusack, is that what you're...
Yes.
Someone posted it in the chat. So
yes, thank you. I spent so much time looking it up and I couldn't find it. I'm like, I've seen that. There's no food in your food. Okay, I'm watching that. A great movie, right? Thank you, whoever put that in there. So here's what we do know. I think y'all have heard me say this. You don't like me. Processed snack food are not nutrient rich, even the organic kind, right? So snack food is for snacks. Eat it. Enjoy it. but know that it's not necessarily where you're getting your nutrients from. Whole foods, fruits and vegetables are nutrient rich. Lean animal protein is a good source of protein. If you're not a vegetarian, right? And it's absolutely okay to be a vegetarian. You're just not going to get your protein from lean animal, right? Chicken, turkey. We've had a lot of turkey, beef, fish, right? Good sources of protein, and many of us are low in protein. So, moderation is key. Moderation is key in everything, right? Even in stuff that's good for you. If you overeat on broccoli, you're going to be having a tough day. So moderation of sugar, moderation of sodium, definitely moderation of those foods that aren't healthy. Doesn't mean get rid of them, just eat them in moderation. And hydration is super important. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Get your hydration from water or vegetables or fruit, right? Those are going to be and whole fruit, not fruit juices, whole fruits. Those are going to be your best sources of hydration. Absolutely. Diet Coke is not a great source of hydration. Not because you're not drinking 12 ounces of water, you are. It's also carbonated, and it's got a whole bunch of other crap in it. It's not just water. And I know someone's going to be like, yeah, but our water sources are polluted. Not as polluted as Diet Coke. So, there you go. Hydration is super, super important. The older we get, the more important it becomes. But believe me, it's super important for the 20-year-old too. All right. So be open-minded to new ideas of health. And I found this quote, this Adam Grant is somebody that I follow on my Instagram. I love him. Many best practices were created for a world that no longer exists. In the face of change, the routines that once moved you forward often become the ruts that hold you back. No practice is ever perfect. The day you stop being open to improving is the day you start stagnating. Oh my goodness, such wisdom. Love it, love it, love it. Look at what you're eating. Look at why you're eating. If you don't change anything, that's okay. But take that moment to really look at why you're doing something, and is it true now? Does it hold true now like it did then? It may have been good for you then, but is it good for you now? And that's what I have for you. Sorry about the technical glitches of the day. Does anybody have any thoughts, any arguments, any things that they would like to add to the discussion? Because I always love
We have a couple
additions.
questions. So, you ready for questions?
I'm ready.
Okay, so the first one is, how do I get my calcium through food consumption and not supplements?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's good for a registered dietitian. What? Dairy. Dairy's good for calcium. Dairy's really good for calcium. But let's say you're lactose free, right? Then where are you going to get your calcium from? Leafy vegetables, I think, are good sources of calcium, but it's very low. It's not anything like you're going to get from dairy. So some lactose-free folks can have yogurts or kefirs, right? Those don't cause the issue. I am lactose intolerant. I have kefir every night, and that's a big. I don't even know that it has calcium, but I get the probiotics from it. So I don't know. I'm going to say I don't know because I don't want to even lie and pretend like I do know. It's a great question, and I'll try to address it in further webinars that I have. But that's why calcium supplements are big biz, and calcium fortified foods are big biz, right? Because it's hard to get calcium. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry.
Does unsweetened applesauce have the same fiber as apples?
Laura, good questions.
Oh, you can see them now, right? Okay.
I can see them now. That's okay.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that too. I would think that the process of making applesauce is going to break down that fiber more than you chewing the apple. So possibly it has the same, but because it's so ground down, is your body going to react to it the same. I don't know. So the reason I say that is if I eat broccoli that's roughly chopped, I have major digestive issues. But if I chop it a lot, I don't have near the digestive issues because I've already kind of pre-chewed it, if you will. So am I getting the same amount of fiber? I don't know. I don't know. That's a good one. I'll look at that one too, at the calcium and the applesauce. I will say that it as a general rule, it is better to eat whole apples than applesauce because you can eat a lot more applesauce than you can eat apple. So you're probably taking in a lot more sugar. So you might be getting the same amount of fiber, but you're going to get a lot more sugar for what you're eating. Or make sure that you only eat a serving size of that applesauce. It's probably going to be not as much as you want. So sorry, Laura, I don't have a good answer for that one. Then we got another one from Lori that says, how long after you eat something do you normally feel discomfort? You know what? These are great questions for your registered dietitian. My husband says if I ever go back to school, it's to be a registered dietitian because he wants all these questions answered. It can be very quick. It can be very quick after you eat. You feel discomfort. If you're talking about like digestive discomfort like gas and bloating, I would say probably pretty quickly, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I know when I finally put together that peanut butter was hurting my stomach, it was about a 10-minute lull. And that's why I never connected it to the peanut butter sandwich. It's because there was enough time that passed that I wasn't thinking about lunch. But I would give yourself a good, 10 minutes up to an hour after you eat, and maybe more. It might not be till you eat your next meal. Has anybody ever eaten, you eat lunch and then you eat dinner and then all of a sudden you have to go to the bathroom really bad? That could be that dinner going through you, but it could also be a reaction to that lunch that you're having. All good questions for registered dietitian. Again, sorry I don't have the right or a definitive answer for you on those. Excellent questions, though. I appreciate it. Jennifer Thomas, you're my hero. Thank you for that say anything thing. That was awesome. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we have any other questions? Anybody? I appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much. I always love giving these talks. I always learn something new. And I'm going to pass you back to Melanie, and she's going to tell you about what we're going to have next week.
Thanks, Paige. I think we all learned so much. I remember we were kind of in the same area, but I remember bad fats. And so I never ate avocados because it was so high in fat. And it wasn't until I went back to school that I realized, oh, that's healthy fat. And I love avocados. So I think there's just a lot that we can learn from this. So thank you so much. So for next week's webinar, we're going to have Kayla Cook, and she's going to talk to us about the importance of sleep in mental and physical health. Sleep is an important part of our overall wellness. A lack of quality sleep affects our mental and physical health. So we're going to learn how to get better sleep and to feel better now. So that should be a good one as well. So hope to see everyone back here next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, everybody.